is The Seas with Nemo and Friends.
Objection. First of all, this ride is great. Top 10 worst rides at Walt Disney World. Let's get right into it.
Number 10. This first ride we're going to start off with is Primeval Whirl at Disney's Animal Kingdom. Now in
Obviously, it was a lot of people's, favorite, but it did close, so I guess that has a rightful spot on this list.
July of 2020, Disney announced that they would be closing this ride for good. But since the
And it's closed now.
coaster structure is still up in Dino-Rama, it needs a spot on the list, sort of as an honorable mention. Now, a lot of people have issues with the Dino-Rama theming, thinking it looks like a cheap carnival in a parking lot, but that's exactly what Imagineers were going for. I think the theming works really well for being a roadside attraction, and there's a lot of detail here with a pretty extensive backstory. I've always been a fan of the theme, but why was Primeval Whirl one of the worst rides then? Well, theming aside, I just don't think the ride was very enjoyable. In a way, this Wild Mouse coaster was unique since the cars spun, but the ride just left you feeling really dizzy. For me, the dizziness always overshadowed the thrill. You spun a lot, plus it became a very rough experience as it aged over the years. With Disney just flat out closing the ride, I guess this backs up the claim of it being one of the worst rides?
I'm incredibly glad they closed this, to be honest. I know a lot of people are going to miss it because it, had a lot of people's childhood, in it, but it was showing its age. I personally didn't visit the land that much. The only reason I went over there was for Dinosaur the Ride, but I'm glad they're going to be utilizing the space for other things. I think it was probably about time.
Isn't it? Apparently the ride was a maintenance nightmare since the manufacturer of the coaster is now defunct. I mean, I kind of predicted that the ride would end up this way when it went seasonal in 2019. Number 9. This next ride might be a bit controversial, but when I asked you all on Instagram and Twitter which Disney rides are the worst, a lot of you said It's a Small World. Firstly,
I fully disagree with this. The only reason people hate it is the repetitive song. I think it's such a staple. It's a ride that Walt Disney himself worked on. Not this one particularly, but the one at the World's Fair. This is based off of Walt Disney's inspiration. It's not that bad of a ride. The song is kind of annoying, I guess, but the artwork and the architecture and the design behind it far outweighs that for me. I think this is a piece to witness. If you're going to Disney and you've never seen this, I highly recommend going to see it because, it's one of the last few things Walt worked on, and I don't know, I like it.
I think we can all agree that this ride is a classic. It's a Small World at the 1964 World's Fair was monumental.
Exactly.
It paved the way for so many of the Disney rides we have today. But
this was the beginning of the animatronic scene. This can be held as, like he said, the beginning of so many of our favorite Disney rides. I feel like it's such a staple. I don't know. I don't think it's not like the best ride ever, but I wouldn't say it's one of the worst at Disney.
But with that aside, a lot of you still don't like it. So I asked you why on Instagram, and these were some of the reasons. A lot of you said the ride was creepy and it felt like the animatronic dolls were staring into your soul. You know what? You're not entirely wrong. The dolls do kind of have these dead eyes, but it personally doesn't bother me too much. Then the second most popular reason why this ride was the worst was because of the song. It just repeats itself over and over and over.
Kind of. It's in different languages, and if you're anything like me, you can't speak any of those languages, so I don't personally, never mattered to me. I think it's a catchy tune.
Over again. Mind you, the song is sung in many different languages, but
That's
throughout
what
the
I'm saying.
13-minute ride, the tune is very repetitive. It can get pretty annoying. That aside, it does have a great message though, since it's an anthem for world peace, something that the world needs a lot of right now. Number 8. When it comes to the rides at Animal Kingdom, most live up to the expectations and deliver a Disney experience. But when it comes to Kali River Rapids, it really falls short. Literally. I've heard from many first-timers say, "That's it," as the ride ends. For a River Rapids ride, it's very short and tame when you compare it to others in the Orlando area, or just any theme park for that matter. It feels like Disney forgot to build part of the ride, and it's kind of true since it was supposed to be a much longer experience. The original plans called for the ride to be named Tiger River Run. All the empty space behind the ride was actually meant for the original concept. It would feature live animals in the same fashion as Kilimanjaro safaris, showcasing the animals native to Asia. But after some budget cuts, the ride was scaled back and it became Cali River Rapids. Prior to construction, Disney canceled even more elements, leaving us with only one major show scene, which was the deforestation area. Now, the ride isn't horrible. I mean, the theming is pretty detailed, but you don't get very wet for it being a rapids ride where the norm is to get soaked. Cali River Rapids always leaves me feeling like I was cheated of an experience that could have been much better.
I can kind of agree with that. It definitely, that ride's never on the top of my list to go to either. It is kind of short, and honestly, I'm like this with all the rides, whether it be the OG Splash Mountain, Tiana's Bayou, or this. If I'm going to be spending my whole day in a theme park, I don't want to be wet. I don't want my clothes soaked. I don't want my socks wet. That's just not what I want to deal with when I'm walking around a park all day.
Number 7. The next ride on the list is The Seas with Nemo and Friends.
Objection. First of all, this ride is great.
And personally, I just think it's a really boring ride when you consider other dark rides at Walt Disney World.
I love this, but it's probably because I love Nemo so much. I love this ride.
Oh, don't worry. Just keep your eyes open for along the way.
It has an aquarium built into the ride. I mean, I think that's so cool.
It's a way to get into the aquarium of the pavilion and a great escape from the heat, but other than that, I don't think you're missing much. With most Disney dark rides having no height requirement, Nemo really feels like it was designed for younger audiences. It's pretty much just video of Nemo and friends on screens with no animatronics and minimal connect.
Wrong. There is indeed an animatronic of the anglerfish chasing Nemo, and I think that scene is cool as hell on the ride, because it gives it a very 3D aspect.
Elements along the ride. It also doesn't help that over the years, the line for the ride has gotten so long where waiting over an hour is...
It's almost like people want to go on the ride because it's a good ride. I'm just saying.
Not worth it, in my opinion. There are so many other rides that are just...
Look at that. You see that? So you got Nemo right there. Behind him are real fish. This is an actual aquarium. I think that's so cool. I think that's sick.
Okay, where waiting an hour is more justified. It wouldn't be so bad if the waits were shorter.
Look.
There just isn't anything imaginative about the ride, and it's pretty forgettable. Don't you agree?
I don't know.
When I think of Disney dark rides, Nemo never crosses my mind.
That's like
Quite
the
frankly,
first one
the
I
best
think
part
of.
of the ride is when it ends, where you get to explore the aquarium. Now
That is a highlight.
is impressive.
I do love the aquarium
Number
part.
6. Tomorrowland at Magic Kingdom has its own issues as a whole. But let me preface this by saying I love Carousel of Progress, and it's the one attraction on...
Whichever one of you people out there voted for this to be one of the worst rides, you're wrong. First of all, this is outrageous. This is a war crime. This is one of the greatest rides in Tomorrowland by far. It's got one of the greatest tunes. I'll be singing the whole time. I highly object to this one, but let's see what he has to say.
Never miss when I'm at Magic Kingdom. Although it's one of my go-tos, it has to be the worst ride at the resort when it comes to maintenance. Disney...
Fair enough. I can't disagree with that. This ride has a lot of its problems. I feel like it could be a maintenance nightmare, and I have seen it in pretty bad condition a lot of times, actually.
He has really neglected Carousel of Progress to the point where it's literally falling apart. If you've seen the animatronic malfunction or breakdown videos, we're always talking about this attraction, and its problems all stem from lack of maintenance. Aside from hands falling off, the animatronics have become very stiff over the years. The theater looks really tired and worn out, not to mention that Act 4 is extremely out of date.
You're not going to tell us about the old days when you didn't even have a car phone.
Hey, Trish,
For a while, we didn't even have a house phone, not to mention Laserdisc.
The attraction really needs some love ASAP.
I don't know. It's like it gives it its charm. Oh, I love this ride so much. I go on it just about every time. I don't know. Oh.
Now, I do enjoy the story of Carousel of Progress, and it could definitely still be relevant in Tomorrowland if they just updated the attraction. I personally don't think they'll ever remove Carousel of Progress completely since it holds so much Disney history. It was one of Walt's favorites, and it's the only attraction at Walt Disney World that Walt was personally involved with. I'll never stop visiting the attraction, but it's really sad seeing it fall into such despair, because it could really be something great.
Agreed, because I don't think in any world this should be considered one of the worst rides at Disney. I personally think it's a staple, and I freaking love it, so.
Number 5. Staying in Tomorrowland, the Tomorrowland Speedway has got to
Now this one's correct. This might be the most correct, actually. This ride needs to go.
be the worst ride in the land as it stands right now.
Yes.
Aside from taking up a lot of valuable space, the ride is just out of date with its gas-powered cars. There's nothing quite like the whiff of fumes you get as you walk by the ride. It's quite the transition from Fantasyland to Tomorrowland. While the Tomorrowland Speedway was closed in 2019 for refurbishment, it was so nice walking through Tomorrowland and not smelling gasoline. This would be such an easy fix for Disney to use electric-powered vehicles. Maybe even get Tesla to sponsor the attraction. It would fit the theme of tomorrow much better than the current go-karts. And this is not to say that I hate the ride. Honestly, the first memory I have of driving a car was when I was a kid riding on the Speedway. And I think it's an experience that a lot of us remember. It's just in 2020,
I also rode this ride as a kid, and I really didn't like it back then, and I really don't like it now. I get it's kind of a staple, like you said, with the smell of the fumes and stuff, but they need to put something else there. There's a bunch of other IP that could go there that would be way, way more suited for Tomorrowland.
There's a better way Disney can do go-karts in a theme park. Also, can I just say that the steering on those cars is the worst? Anyone else agree? Yes. It's always a struggle to not have your car hit the rails. Over the years, the Tomorrowland Speedway has been shortened many times, including just last year in 2019. So I wouldn't be surprised if eventually Disney shortens the ride so much that they just remove it altogether and something new takes its place. Number 4.
I hope so, because that would be ideal. I would love for them to replace that with some new IP. Anything would be better.
Next on the list is Adventureland's Magic Carpets of Aladdin at Magic Kingdom. Although this is where my favorite camels reside, I do have a couple problems with the ride. The first being location, which is...
Okay. When it comes to this, right, he's correct. I love the camels. I love the spitting camel. It's one of my favorite things down there. But why does Disney have so many floating carousels? I don't think this ride is good at all. I mean, if you're going for a floating carousel, aren't you going to ride like the Astro Orbiter or Dumbo? I mean, those are kind of like the top two. This kind of just feels like an afterthought. They kind of just, I don't know, they kind of just put this one in there.
Is honestly the worst. Before the ride was built in 2001, this area of the land was very open with a lot more room to move. The ride's pretty compact, but it's placed right in the middle of Adventureland. It takes up way too much room.
I don't know, and I personally just don't feel like it's themed correctly. I don't know, you have stuff like pirates over there and, you know, and more of like an adventure, like a tiki hut and stuff like that. I don't think this fits, like, at all. They need to either move it or remove it or change it or something, but I don't know. I feel like it's 1, not a good ride, 2, it's way too many floating carousels, and 3, I just don't think it fits the theme.
There's always a bottleneck around this area since the paths are so narrow, but this was never a problem before the carpets. Honestly, if Disney ever decides to remove the spinner, I'd be sad to lose the camels, but wouldn't be opposed to it.
Maybe we just keep the camels, because I like the camels too. I say we keep the camels, get rid of the floating carousel, everyone's happy, there we go.
Especially since the park already has 3 other spinners. Dumbo is a classic,
exactly.
And Astro Orbiter at least gives you a unique view
That's
of the
what
park.
I'm saying, like...
And I get creating rides with no height requirements, but a majority of the rides at Magic Kingdom already fall into this category. When you look at the ride mixed in with the overall theme of Adventureland, it kind of stands out like a sore thumb.
That's what I just said. Like, he nails it. That's exactly right.
In my opinion, it brings too much fantasy into the land. Now, what do you think?
Agree. No, 100%. You hit the nail on the
Number
head.
3. The next ride is Mission Space in Future World at Epcot. Now, when this ride first made its debut in 2000,
I get why people don't like this one. I'm going to preference a few things. I've done it. I think first of all, if you don't like tight spaces, it's an absolute nightmare. I don't mind tight spaces that much. The ride mechanic is super cool. I actually think it's really neat that you're sitting in a cockpit of a spaceship and you're like flying and you go up into outer space. If you want to do that, do the slower version that doesn't spin, because it's a cool experience. But once you do that like orange level, I get why so many people get sick on this ride. It is a motion sickness nightmare through and through.
2003, people were kind of upset that this replaced the classic dark ride Horizons. It was seen as a downgrade, and right off the bat, there was chatter about the ride being too intense.
Those who are prone to motion sickness
Yeah.
or made uncomfortable by enclosed dark spaces, simulators, or spinning should bypass this experience.
The attraction spins vigorously and exposes you to forces up to 2.5 G, which is twice the force of gravity at the Earth's surface. It was so intense that Disney made motion sickness bags available at arm's reach on the ride. You know, a Disney ride is a bit too intense when there's barf bags involved. I think this might be the only one.
Again, it's not a ride for everyone, but I feel like it's pretty well done. I mean, I like it. I mean, I think it's cool sitting in there and flying the spaceship and being like in a cockpit. I think it's pretty sick.
Now, I love thrill rides. Drop me over 300 feet down a coaster and I'm
Correct.
in heaven. But the orange mission on Mission Space made me so dizzy and nauseous that I had to sit down for a half an hour. It was honestly one of the worst rides I've been on. But there is the green mission that is much less intense. That one doesn't spin you, but instead you just feel some rattles and shakes. It's okay, but the big issue with the ride cabins on both missions is how claustrophobic it makes you feel.
I just feel like that adds to the experience. Personally, I really like that. I don't know. I mean, I get not everyone likes tight spaces, but you're in a spaceship, dude. I mean, I know it's not for everyone, but I think that part's pretty cool.
There isn't much room in there, and I'm not someone who gets claustrophobic, but this ride just hits differently. TripAdvisor had some great reviews for the ride. Sand said the ride was like a torture chamber. Hearts 1 said it wasn't fun, it was painful. And Hot Beach Mamas said she was surprised this wasn't a Saw movie. So the people have spoken. Now, there are some who don't mind this ride, but for me, it's honestly one of the worst rides.
Yeah, I get that.
Number
I see.
2. I said earlier that I don't mind the theming of Dino-Rama. I actually really enjoy this area, but I still think Triceratops Spin is one of the worst rides at Walt Disney World. Now, I get its purpose.
Fair enough.
It's a ride for a younger demographic since there isn't much for families with young children at Animal Kingdom. But it's literally Dumbo with dinosaurs. And out of the other 3 spinners at the...
I mean, I kind of see that, but I mean, it's a zoo. Like, a lot of it, like, what kid doesn't like seeing all the animals? Like, I feel like that's kind of the whole point of, like, a big point of Animal Kingdom, especially with kids, is, like, the animals, you know? I don't know. I think that pretty much sums that up. But again, this one is closed and Dinoland is going away, so this one is being changed. But yeah, enough floating carousels. I think that's Disney. Let's move away from that for a little bit, okay? No more. Let's not put any more floating carousels up.
resort, this one gives you the worst views. If you've done Dumbo, you've done Triceratops Spin. Now, since Primeval World has closed, I don't think there's much time left for this ride and the land as a whole. I'm not saying it's going to close immediately, but in the future, we'll definitely see Disney making way for something new in this area. Number 1. Oh, Figment.
I get this all the time. When I personally rank rides, people hate Figment. I like this ride, and maybe I don't know. Apparently, I like a lot of these rides that apparently everybody else thinks is absolutely atrocious. I think this ride is cute and fun. I don't know. Let's see what he has to say.
Figment. As a character, you're adorable, and I always come pay you a visit. But when we look at Journey into Imagination as a whole, it's one of the worst rides at Walt Disney World.
I don't believe you could put this ride below the camels and the Triceratops spin, man. Oh my god, below Aladdin and Triceratops, I just personally cannot accept that this is the worst ride at Disney, because that's just not true.
For something that takes place in the Imagination Pavilion, the ride lacks a lot of imagination and innovation. Not to mention, this is another ride that Disney has neglected in terms of maintenance. Figment's mobility has become pretty stiff over the years in the Sound Lab, and the ride has just been plagued with audio issues. Now, this might be one of the worst rides, but this version of Journey into Imagination may not be the worst version we've seen. That award goes to Journey into Your Imagination, which was far worse. But when you consider the original version of the ride, this is a replacement that fell short. Since debuting in 2002,
I like this ride. Poor Figment. Figment doesn't deserve this. He doesn't deserve to be the worst ride. He's the spirit of imagination, man.
it's really starting to show its age in terms of technology. Figment looks like he belongs in one of those knockoff Disney animated films. Surely with Disney being an animation studio, they could bring him up to modern animation standards. Dare I say even maybe replace Nigel Channing with another actor and create a new storyline? It has been rumored that this would be a ride that will eventually get a refurbishment. So I guess we'll have to see what the future has in store for Journey into Imagination.
I think this was a pretty good list. A lot of these rides on here I 100% agree with that they are the worst. A few on there like Figment and then Carousel, I feel like the problem is they aren't like bad rides. Like you said, I think it's just they need some love and care, some refurbishment. But other than that, thank you as always so much for watching, and thank you TPM Vids for making another banger video for me to react to. Leave in the comment section, what is y'all's least favorite ride at Disney, or what ride do you think is the worst ride at Disney? And I'll see y'all in the next video. Peace.